Are we witnessing a battle to shape Turkey's future? On the 19th of March, Ekrem Imamoğlu, the mayor of Istanbul, the country's largest city, was arrested on corruption charges. Seen as the leading political challenger to the country's long-serving president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the move has sparked widespread protests. But while many have seen this as an attempt by Erdogan to preserve his power, there may in fact be another explanation. So, what exactly lies behind the events, and just how could it determine Turkey's future direction? Hello and welcome. If you're new to the channel, my name is James Ker-Lindsay, and here I take an informed look at international relations, conflict, security, and statehood. Just how does power pass from one leader to another in authoritarian regimes? Experience shows it can happen in numerous ways. In some cases, the leader will be overthrown, either by mass protests or by violent revolution. At other times, especially where a veneer of democracy remains in place, they may eventually be defeated at the ballot box, unable to rig the vote any longer. Sometimes, though rarely, a leader may opt to stand down, perhaps with promises of immunity. Alternatively, they may continue until they die in office, sparking a power struggle between the ruling party. However, just occasionally, an autocratic ruler will groom a trusted successor to take over. A good case in point is Turkey. After 2 decades in power, there are growing questions about the future of the country's long-standing president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Although he's officially due to step down in 2028 and has previously signalled his wish to retire, many suspect that he may now be trying to prolong his term in office. But could he instead be preparing to hand over power? And if so, just who could be his successor? The Republic of Turkey, now officially known as Turkey, lies on the Anatolian Peninsula, a stretch of land linking Southeast Europe and the Middle East. At 785,000 square kilometres, or around 300,000 square miles, its population is around 86 million. While the majority are ethnic Turks and predominantly Sunni Muslim, the country has several ethnic and religious minority communities, including the Kurds, Greeks, Jews and Armenians. Modern Turkey emerged after the First World War. As European powers prepared to carve up the remnants of the old Ottoman Empire, Turkish nationalist forces successfully fought back under the leadership of General Mustafa Kemal, leading to the creation of the Republic of Turkey in 1923. In the years that followed, the new country was transformed as radical social, political and economic policies were introduced. These included a new alphabet based on the Latin script and a strict separation between religion and state. But while some elements of democracy were now introduced, including the right of women to vote, the country remained firmly authoritarian during its early years. Assuming the name Ataturk, Kemal served as Turkey's first president until he died in 1938, when he was succeeded by his trusted ally and Prime Minister İsmet İnönü. Meanwhile, with free and open elections prohibited, politics was dominated by Ataturk's Republican People's Party. Although Turkey was at first highly controlled, this began to change following the Second World War. In 1946, the country finally became a multi-party democracy, holding its first competitive parliamentary elections 4 years later. These were won by the Democrat Party, led by Adnan Menderes, who would go on to become the country's prime minister for the next decade. But amidst growing political polarisation and accusations of authoritarianism, Menderes was overthrown by a military coup in 1960 and later executed. While Turkey returned to civilian rule the following year, the turmoil continued, leading to another military intervention in 1971. Then, amidst rising political violence, another full-scale military coup took place in 1980. However, despite the reintroduction of democracy a few years later, by the 1990s, the country had once again sunk into chaos. Alongside a fragmented political system and a growing Kurdish insurgency, the military, which continued to monitor the government closely, became increasingly concerned about a new threat: the growth of political Islam. Although the challenge to Turkey's traditional secularism may have come to the fore in the 1990s, its roots went back many decades. In 1972, an engineer called Necmettin Erbakan established the openly religious National Salvation Party. But while this went on to win seats in Parliament and even joined several coalition governments in the 1970s, it was banned by the military after the 1980 coup. Undeterred, following the restoration of democracy, Erbakan formed a new group, the Welfare Party. This steadily gained strength until, in 1996, Erbakan became Turkey's first Islamist prime minister. However, his tenure was soon cut short. A year later, the military forced him from office and banned the party. And it was at this point that one of Erbakan's trusted young protégés came to the fore. Recep Tayyip Erdogan first gained national prominence in 1994 when he became mayor of Istanbul. However, after the Welfare Party was banned, he was also forced from power and jailed for 4 months for religious incitement. In 2001, Erdogan returned to national attention, setting up the Justice and Development Party, the AKP. And all this would come to fruition just a year later. In November 2002, the AKP won a landslide victory in parliamentary elections. But while Erdogan had been prevented from running for a parliamentary seat due to his conviction, the party soon overturned the ban. And on the 14th of March 2003, after having returned to Parliament, Erdogan became Prime Minister. Although many were suspicious of Erdogan, fearing he'd aggressively promote his Islamic views, he initially pursued a modernising agenda. Meanwhile, as part of his efforts to join the European Union, he also began curtailing the power of the military, and as a result, he won further elections in 2007 and 2011. But while things may have started well, by the end of his first decade in office, fears were growing about his increasing authoritarianism. This came to the fore following mass demonstrations in 2013 when he introduced restrictions on civil liberties, including limits on the rights to protest, media restrictions, and steps to curb freedom of speech. Meanwhile, Erdogan continued consolidating his power. For instance, in 2014, he gave up the post of Prime Minister and instead became President. From there, Erdogan's power went from strength to strength. Having seen off an attempted coup in 2016, he then launched a massive crackdown. Alongside further new restrictions, he purged the government, military, judiciary, schools and universities of any opposition. At the same time, he successfully changed the constitution, abolishing the post of Prime Minister and creating a United States-style executive presidency. By now, Erdogan's rule had become openly authoritarian. Having won the country's first presidential election in 2018, Erdogan strengthened his position by continuing his crackdown on the opposition. But by now, it seemed as though Erdogan was beginning to tire. As he approached his 70th birthday, he looked increasingly old and frail, and there were persistent rumours about his health. Moreover, under the terms of the constitution, he wouldn't be permitted to stand for a third term when his time in office ended in 2028. Indeed, seemingly bowing to the inevitable, he even hinted at retirement. Despite this, it appears that maybe Erdogan is now having second thoughts. In recent months, there have been suggestions that he's been looking at ways to circumvent the constitutional restrictions on running again. And it's to this end that the Republican People's Party was on the cusp of selecting their candidate for the next presidential election, the popular mayor of Istanbul, Ekrem Imamoğlu. I hope you're finding this useful. If so, please do give it a like and perhaps subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks so much. And now back to the video. And it's this that sparked the latest crisis. On Tuesday, the 18th of March, Istanbul University announced that it had revoked Imamoğlu's degree, citing irregularities during his studies at a university in northern Cyprus. This was crucial, as under the Turkish constitution, the president must have a university diploma. But while Imamoğlu immediately condemned the move, it was merely a prelude to what would come next. The following morning, the mayor, along with 100 others, was arrested on suspicion of corruption and embezzlement. The news sparked outrage, and despite a 4-day ban on demonstrations in Istanbul, hundreds of thousands took to the streets to protest at what most observers saw as the blatantly obvious attempt by the Turkish leader to remove the greatest threat to his power. Since then, anger has continued, with the RPP leader calling the move a coup d'etat against the people's right to elect their leader. But while it's tempting to see all this as Erdogan's attempt to hold on to power, especially with suggestions that a third term may be possible, there may in fact be another rationale behind all of this. Given his age and growing frailty, many feel that he may be unable to continue for much longer anyway. In this sense, Erdogan may in fact be clearing the way for a successor rather than preparing for another presidential run. Indeed, there's been growing speculation about this in recent years. But if this is the case, who would be most likely to take over? In fact, several figures stand out. Interestingly, and following in the footsteps of neighbouring friend and close ally Azerbaijan, where power passed from one generation of the Aliyev family to the next, the focus of attention has been on Erdogan's family members. One name that's often been suggested is Erdogan's second son, Bilal. But many feel that this is unlikely. Although he's widely known in Turkey and has close ties with Islamist and conservative circles, he's taken little active role in politics, instead focusing on business. Moreover, there's little apparent sign that Erdogan has been grooming him for power. Then there are Erdogan's two sons-in-law. For many years, the focus was on Berak al-Bayrak, who's married to Erdogan's daughter, Ezra. Having served as energy minister and then finance minister under Erdogan, he was long seen as the natural successor. However, following his resignation in 2020, following several policy failures and clashes with other government figures, he's slipped from public attention. Instead, many now suggest Erdogan's other son-in-law, Selçuk Bayraktar. In recent years, he's come to national prominence as the head of a hugely successful military drone manufacturer. Regarded as one of Turkey's most successful technology exports, this has made him highly respected and popular in the country, especially in nationalist circles. The problem is that he has no government experience, at least as yet. Then there are possible candidates from beyond this immediate family circle. One name that's frequently raised is the Foreign Minister, Hakan Fidan. Having served as the head of the intelligence service, he's seen as a close and trusted ally. Interestingly though, he isn't a member of the AKP, although of course that could well change. In this sense, recent events may not just be about Erdogan preserving his own political power. Instead, they may in fact be part of a broader effort to pave the way for political control to pass to a designated successor. This could be in 2028 when the next elections are scheduled. Alternatively, the president may be eyeing another presidential run to buy some more time for a formal successor to be prepared. And it's for all these reasons that Imamoğlu's arrest isn't just significant from the perspective of Turkey's current politics. It could also be crucial for the country's future direction for many years, if not decades, to come. Having dominated Turkish politics for so long, Erdogan may now be clearing the way for a successor. I hope you found that helpful. If so, here are some more videos that you might find useful. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next video.